There is a kind of loneliness that doesn't look like loneliness. It doesn't sit alone in a quiet room, or wander through a deserted street at night. It doesn't appear as isolation, or stillness, or distance. Instead, it appears in the middle of everything. It appears when your notifications are buzzing, when your timeline is full, when the room is lit by 1,000 digital voices. It appears when you are surrounded by words, and yet somehow, none of them touch you. This is the loneliness of the modern world. A loneliness not of absence, but of invisibility. A loneliness that whispers, "I am here, but no one really sees me. I am speaking, but no one really hears what I mean. I am surrounded, but somehow still alone." We live in an age where connection is instant, but understanding is rare, where interaction is constant, but intimacy is scarce, where everything is shared, but nothing feels held. Tonight we explore the quiet, profound ache of modern loneliness, the kind that hides beneath the surface of our lives, the kind that follows us into crowded rooms, the kind that grows not from being alone, but from being unseen. This is the era of silent loneliness. Loneliness used to be simple. It meant being physically alone. No one to talk to, no one nearby, no community, no companionship. But today's loneliness is different, more complex, more hidden, more paradoxical. It is now possible to be lonely in the middle of a crowded room, to be lonely while talking to people, to be lonely while surrounded by friends, followers, group chats, and comment sections. Because loneliness, in its deepest form, is not measured by proximity, but by connection, by emotional resonance, by presence, by being truly known. The modern world gives us countless ways to communicate, but fewer and fewer ways to be understood. Our messages are instant, but our meaning gets lost. Our words multiply, but our voices fade. Our networks expand, but our hearts have never felt more unanchored. We have entered a strange era, a world of hyperconnection without closeness, a time when the tools built to bring us together have quietly eroded the very thing we were seeking. This is the new shape of loneliness. To be digitally connected, but emotionally unheld. To be visible to hundreds, yet seen by no one. To be reachable, but unreachable in spirit. And slowly, quietly, this changes us. There was a time when conversations were simple. Two people, face to face, presence shared, silences allowed, nothing recorded, nothing optimized, nothing curated. But now, almost every interaction takes place on a stage. Online conversations are performed, edited, filtered, compressed, strategized. We don't just talk anymore. We present. We manage perception. We prepare our next line. We sculpt our voice into something consumable. The modern world has turned communication into a kind of theater. A constant balancing act between honesty and image. Between what we feel and what we're willing to show. Between who we are and who we think others want us to be. When expression becomes performance, loneliness grows quietly in the background. Because being understood requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is almost impossible when you're always on stage. We have become so used to performing that sometimes we forget how to simply speak, how to reveal the unpolished truth, how to say, "I'm tired," I'm scared. I feel alone. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Instead, we offer polished versions, fragmented versions, rehearsed versions. And people respond to the mask, not the person. And little by little, we begin to believe that the real version of us is not something anyone truly wants to see. There is a strange pain that comes from being watched by many, but known by none. From gathering thousands of interactions, but struggling to name 3 people who genuinely understand your inner world. From scrolling endlessly through other people's lives, yet feeling invisible in your own. Our digital ecosystems have created a new relational paradox. We have more weak ties than ever. Acquaintances, followers, mutuals, connections, but fewer deep ties, fewer confidants, fewer soul-level relationships. Attention is abundant. Presence is rare. We are seen constantly, but not held, observed, but not understood, noticed, but not known. This kind of loneliness doesn't shout. It whispers. It builds slowly. It grows quietly inside the heart. It is the loneliness of sitting in a group chat, typing something vulnerable, and deleting it because it feels out of place. It is the loneliness of posting something meaningful and receiving responses that entirely miss the point. It is the loneliness of speaking and feeling like your words pass through people instead of reaching them. There are millions of people who feel this way, alone in a world of endless conversation. The truth is simple, but painful. To be seen is rare. To be watched is common. And we are exhausting ourselves in the space between the two. For most of human history, we lived between 3 spaces: home, work, and the third place, a shared social environment where community naturally formed. Cafes, parks, libraries, community centers, local gatherings, neighborhood hangouts, places where people were not customers, but companions in the same environment. These places acted as the social glue of everyday life. They were where friendships formed without effort, where conversations unfolded organically, where people learned to tolerate each other, to read subtle cues, to exist side by side, human to human. But in the last few decades, the third place has quietly disappeared. Cities became too expensive, suburbs became too isolated, public spaces became too commercialized. Everything became optimized for profit, or productivity, or privacy. Even the places that once held us, cafes, bookshops, lounges, are now dominated by solitary individuals, behind laptops, headphones blocking conversation, everyone tucked into their own private digital world. The result is subtle, but profound. We've lost the environments where community naturally happens. Without third places, social connection becomes something we have to schedule, negotiate, plan, and often postpone. Friendships become appointments instead of shared life. Relationships become fragile because they lack the soil of regular, effortless proximity. We forget how to encounter each other without an agenda. We forget how to talk to strangers. We forget how to be part of a community larger than our curated circle. And loneliness grows. Not loudly, not dramatically, but slowly, like dust settling in an unused room. A society without third places is a society where people drift, where they feel uprooted, where they forget what it feels like to belong somewhere, with others, for no reason except being alive at the same time. It is one of the quiet tragedies of modern life that many people have nowhere to simply exist in the company of others. Loneliness is not just emotional, it is biological. It is wired into our survival instincts. It is the mind and body's way of saying, "You are too far from the tribe. Move closer." In ancestral life, to be isolated meant danger. It meant vulnerability. It meant a reduced chance of survival. So the brain evolved a signal, a sharp, uncomfortable ache, to push us back toward others, just like hunger pushes us toward food, and thirst pushes us toward water. But here's the twist. In the modern world, the instinct remains, but the path back to connection has become obscured. Loneliness sets off stress responses: higher cortisol, shallow sleep, increased anxiety, heightened alertness. The body enters a kind of quiet emergency, trying to warn us that something essential is missing. But when loneliness becomes chronic, the alarm system gets stuck. It becomes harder to trust others, harder to reach out, harder to feel safe in connection. Loneliness feeds on itself. The longer we feel it, the more threatening social interaction becomes. We imagine rejection more readily. We withdraw to avoid disappointment. We misread neutral cues as negative. The mind becomes protective, but in the wrong direction, guarding us from the very thing we need. It's not weakness. It's not failure. It's biology. Misfiring in an environment it didn't evolve to understand. The world has changed faster than our nervous systems can adapt. The lonely brain is not broken. It is trying in its own way to keep you alive. But it needs a different kind of environment to heal. One with patient connection, gentle presence, and a slow rebuilding of trust. The internet gives us endless stimulation, but almost no nourishment. We scroll, we watch, we swipe, we reply, we refresh. We consume thousands of micro-interactions every single day. Words, images, videos, jokes, messages. A constant drip of social flavor, without any of the substance. We confuse activity with connection. We confuse entertainment with intimacy. We confuse presence with proximity. Most digital interaction is emotionally thin. It resembles connection, but it doesn't satisfy it. A like feels like affection, until you realize it took no thought at all. A typing bubble feels like anticipation, until it vanishes into nothing. A long conversation in text feels deep, until you sense the absence of tone, gesture, warmth, and shared physical atmosphere. There is a difference between interaction and intimacy. A difference between attention and attunement. A difference between speaking and being heard. Digital life offers sample-sized emotions, simulated connection, fast, convenient, low-effort exchanges. but very little that reaches the deeper layers of the heart. It is possible to talk to dozens of people in one day and feel completely untouched by all of it. This is emotional malnutrition, a full stomach with no nutrients. Humans need more than symbols of connection. We need tone, the warmth of a voice. We need body language, the subtle cues that build trust. We need shared silence, moments where presence, not words, does the communicating. We need physical co-presence, two hearts regulating each other, two nervous systems syncing, two minds understanding each other, beyond language. The digital world cannot replicate these things. It can only imitate them. And imitation, in large doses, creates hunger. We become overstimulated, but undernourished. Busy, but empty. Connected, but lonely. Here is one of the strangest paradoxes of our time. People want deeper relationships than ever. Yet they are more terrified of intimacy than ever. We live in a world where vulnerability feels dangerous, where being open feels like exposure, where uncertainty feels like a threat. A world where one wrong moment, one awkward message, one misunderstood sentence, one screenshot taken out of context, can spiral into embarrassment, judgment, or conflict. So we protect ourselves. We keep our real feelings tucked away. We show only the parts we won't be judged for. We avoid asking for reassurance. Avoid expressing need. Avoid showing the messy parts that make us human. We become structured, measured, careful. We manage impressions instead of emotions. We curate instead of connect. We withhold instead of reveal. But intimacy has a cost. Being known. Truly known. Not admired. Not idealized. Not followed. Known. And to be known requires vulnerability. The kind of vulnerability modern life constantly teaches us to avoid. It's no wonder so many people feel lonely. Not because no one cares about them, but because they don't feel safe letting anyone truly see them. We fear being misunderstood. We fear being rejected. We fear being judged. We fear giving someone the power to hurt us. So we live inside half connections. Relationships that are close enough to prevent isolation, but not close enough to risk heartbreak. We hover at the edges of intimacy, without ever stepping in. And this is one of the great emotional traps of our era. We desire depth, but avoid the discomfort required to attain it. Loneliness thrives in that space, in the gap between the connection we long for and the vulnerability we fear. Many people today are not lonely because they lack relationships. They are lonely because they have armored their hearts to survive modern life. Loneliness does not affect us all the same way. It moves differently through men and differently through women. And these differences are rarely discussed with compassion, only with blame, or resentment, or misunderstanding. Let's approach this gently. Many men today experience a profound social isolation, far deeper than most people realize. Fewer close friendships, fewer emotional outlets, fewer spaces where vulnerability is allowed, or welcomed, or understood. Many men carry their loneliness quietly, not because they don't feel it, but because they've been taught that expressing it makes them weak. Meanwhile, many women today experience a different kind of loneliness: emotional exhaustion. They are expected to be the caretakers of relationships, the emotional anchors, the ones who check in, maintain connection, keep everyone together. But often, they don't receive the same emotional presence they are asked to give. Men feel alone because they feel they cannot open up. Women feel alone because they open up, and no one meets them there. Two forms of isolation that look like opposites, but come from the same wound: a world that no longer teaches people how to connect with depth, courage, and reciprocity. We are not living through a gender war. We are living through a shared ache, expressed differently, on different sides. But underneath it, the longing is the same: to be understood, to be appreciated, to feel safe with someone, to not carry life alone. When people talk about the loneliness epidemic, they often point fingers. But the deeper truth is this: everyone is hurting. Everyone is overwhelmed. Everyone is trying to protect themselves from a world that feels increasingly disconnected. The crisis is not men versus women. The crisis is loneliness versus all of us. Until we realize that, we will continue speaking past one another, instead of reaching toward each other. One of the most overlooked sources of modern loneliness is the fragmentation of our shared world. Not long ago, people lived inside similar cultural landscapes. They watched the same shows, followed the same stories, participated in the same rituals, and shaped their identities within a common narrative. But today, each person inhabits a personalized universe, constructed by algorithms, preferences, echo chambers, and digital microcultures. We don't just have different opinions, we have different realities, different information streams, different sources of meaning, different emotional ecosystems. Two people sitting next to each other may be living in entirely separate worlds, not metaphorically, but literally. This creates a new kind of loneliness: the loneliness of worldview. You can feel emotionally disconnected, not because people don't care about you, but because no one around you seems to see the world the way you do. We become isolated within the landscapes of our minds, our fears, our aspirations, our beliefs, our interpretations of reality. And without shared meaning, shared landmarks, shared cultural touchstones, it becomes harder to feel part of a community. We lose the sense of moving together through life. We drift into parallel worlds, people living next to one another, but rarely intersecting. We no longer live with each other. We live next to each other, scrolling past each other's realities, consuming each other's moments, without ever sharing a story. In this way, the digital age has created a loneliness that no generation before us could have imagined. A loneliness not just of the heart, but of the world itself. If no one sees the world as you do, it becomes easy to feel like no one sees you either. Loneliness is painful. It is raw, uncomfortable, and deeply human. And when something hurts, we look for ways to escape it. So we try to cope in all the ways modern life teaches us to. We stay busy. We fill our calendars. We overwork. If we're always in motion, we don't have to feel the stillness where loneliness resides. We scroll endlessly. We drown ourselves in content. We let the glow of the screen distract us from the ache of the heart. We chase stimulation over connection. We search for intensity instead of intimacy. We try to solve emotional hunger with digital noise. But none of it works. Not for long. Because every coping mechanism has the same flaw. It distracts us from loneliness instead of healing it. Distraction numbs, but it does not nourish. It soothes, but it does not satisfy. It silences the alarm, but it does not address the cause. And when the distractions fade, when the video ends, when the scroll stops, when the room grows quiet again, the loneliness returns. Sometimes stronger than before. We cannot outpace loneliness. We cannot outrun it. We cannot bury it beneath stimulation. Loneliness is healed, not by avoidance, but by connection. The real kind, the human kind, the slow, vulnerable, imperfect kind. There is a path out of loneliness, not a quick one, not an easy one, but a real one. And it begins with something simple, quiet, and deeply human. Presence. Connection does not require perfection. It does not require brilliance, or charisma, or constant confidence. It requires honesty. It requires attention. It requires allowing yourself to be a little more human than the world tells you to be. We rebuild connection through small acts. Reaching out before we feel ready. Sharing a truth we usually hide. Letting our real emotions into the room. Allowing someone else to hold space for us. Listening with curiosity instead of preparing our next line. We rebuild connection by letting the mask slip, even briefly. We rebuild connection by allowing relationships to grow slowly, not optimized, not curated, not polished for display. True connection is messy, awkward, unpredictable, beautiful, human. We have been taught to fear this, but it is the only thing that dissolves loneliness. The moment we stop performing and start being, connection begins. The moment we stop trying to impress and start trying to understand, connection deepens. The moment we stop hiding our loneliness and start naming it, it loosens its grip. Loneliness does not vanish in a single moment. It fades slowly as we build a life filled with people who see us and whom we choose to see in return. Not perfectly, not constantly, but genuinely. And that is enough. At the end of the day, loneliness is not a personal failure. It is not a flaw, or a deficiency, or a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a signal, a longing, a quiet message from the deepest part of your being, reminding you that you were not made to carry life alone. It is the echo of your humanity, calling you back to connection. In a world full of noise, it is easy to feel unseen. In a world full of speed, it is easy to feel left behind. In a world full of performance, it is easy to feel inadequate. But underneath all of that, beneath the algorithms, beneath the scrolling, beneath the masks we all wear, there is something soft, and real, and deeply alive within you. A small, steady lantern that has not gone out. It flickers when you feel lonely. It glows when you feel understood. It brightens when you speak honestly. It warms when someone meets you with presence. This lantern is the part of you that knows you are meant for connection. You are not alone in wanting to be seen. You are not alone in longing for closeness. You are not alone in your hesitation, your fear, your hope. And you are not alone in this moment. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending this time here. Thank you for choosing presence in a world that rarely asks for it. Wherever you are, whoever you are not walking this world unseen. You are not alone. You were never alone.